नमो भगवते श्री रमणाय। ओम नमो भगवते श्री रमणाय। ओम नमो भगवते श्री रमणाय। भगवते श्री रमणाय। ओम नमो 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 भगवते श्री रमणाय।
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We will begin today's Ramana Puranam Satsang with the first verse from Tirumandiram. ஐந்து கரத்தனை யானை முகத்தனை இந்தி இளம்பிறை போலி மெய்ற்றனை நந்தி மகந்தனை ஞான கொழுந்தினை புந்தியில் வைத்தடி போற்றுகின்றேனே. This is the first verse from Tirumandiram, praying to Lord Ganesha to bestow us the fortitude and knowledge to understand the task at hand, which is to understand Ramana Puranam as composed by Sri Muruganar and our dear Bhagavan. So we finished under line number 126 last week. We will quickly review only last week's lines and then we will start new verses today. We began at line number 107 last week. உயிர்க்கு உருகன் செய்ய ஒருபடா செம்மை இயற்கு ஒரு கண்ணாய் இலகும் எந்தை அருள் வாழ்க அறந்தவரா சிந்தை சேர் அந்தணர்க்கு அன்னிக்கும் சிறந்த பரானந்த செழுங்கழலோன் சீர்வாழ்க அன்பகத்து நாளும் அகலாது இனிது உறைந்து துன்பகற்றும் இன்பத் துணைவன் அடித்தூள் வாழ்க சந்நிதியாய் எங்கும் தலைவணங்கும் தாழ்மையால் என்னது யான் அற்றோர்கட்கு ஏய்ப்பில் வைப்போன் தாழ்வாழ்க போது அவப்போதாய் கணமும் போதல் அறப்புந்தி செய்து மாதவ பேரேந்தல் மகிழும் மலர்த்தாள் வாழ்க ஓயாது உளறுவேன் உள்ளம் அருள் வெள்ளமாய் வாயை அடைப்பித்த வல்லாளன் சீர்வாழ்க அந்நியங்கள் யாவும் மெய்ஞான ஆன்ம சொரூபமாம் தன்னிலே கற்பனையாம் தற்பரன் தாழ்வாழ்க தெய்வச் சுழியர் சிவபுரத்து சீர்விளக்கும் சைவப் பெருமான் சரணமலர் வாழ்க பிறையொடு தன் சென்னி பிறங்கக் கடல்வாய் கரைவிடம் நன்குண்ட களத்தோன் தாழ்வாழ்க பழவாதனையை பரிசு அறச் செற்று என்னை விழைவாக ஆண்ட வினோதன் அடிவல்க. We ended at this point last week, which is line number 126. பழவாதனையை பரிசு அறச் செற்று என்னை விழைவாக ஆண்ட வினோதன் அடி வெல்க. In these two lines, Muruganar is saying that to render all my past karmas powerless, he, of his own accord, took charge of my life as my steadfast support. As a result, he has completely absorbed me and he has been ruling over me. May his sacred feet, the refuge of all, ever triumph. We saw this beautiful word, Vinodan, which is the one who is fully dedicated to a particular work or one who is determined to accomplish some work, referring to Bhagavan as the Lord who is determined to help his devotees to fully realize the self. So, with those two lines, we will move to the next two lines today, which are lines 127 and 128. கெடுத்தல் அரும் வல்வினையை கீண்டு பூண்டோடே அடர்த்தல் அரும் உட்பகையும் அட்டோன் அடி வெல்க. These are two beautiful lines that talks about how Bhagavan removes the deep-rooted karmas of those who have surrendered completely. கெடுத்தல் அரும் வல்வினையை கீண்டு பூண்டோடே அடர்த்தல் அரும் உட்பகையும் அட்டோன் அடி வெல்க. We will split this one word at a time. கெடுத்தல் அரும் வல்வினை. கெடுத்தல். Kedital is to get rid of or to remove or to eradicate. Kedital arum is hard to get rid of or very difficult to end or very deep rooted. Val vinay. Val is very harsh or one which has a lot of power, a lot of strength. So Val vinay is very deep rooted and harsh karmas of the past deeds, are those reactions of actions that have been previously performed by the individual self. In one of the prior lines, Muruganar had explained that reactions of those actions must be enjoyed by the individual soul. There is no explicit way out. Here, it's clearly explained, கெடுத்தல் அரும் வல்வினையை கீண்டு பூண்டோடே. The deep-rooted, harsh karmas of the past are hard to eradicate, are hard to remove, but Bhagavan does keendu poondode. Keendu is to dig, poondode is with those roots that are deep. So keendu poondode is he digs deep and removes them at its root. What does he do? He removes those deeply rooted, harsh and powerful karmas of the past actions completely at its roots and removes them for the individual soul. Moreover, he also does adarthal arum utpahayum atton. Adarthal is constantly fighting or constantly waging wars. Arum is to bud or to sprout. Utpahayam is internal conflict or the internal enemy, or it's referring to the ego that is constantly creating fights and constantly bubbling up with desires and hatreds. So, in addition to removing the past karmas at its root, which are normally very hard to do, he also removes the infighting and bubbling passions and hatreds of the inner darkness or the inner enemy, by which he means the ego. Atone adivelha. Atone is the destroyer or one who has completely destroyed those things. Adi here means the holy feet or his sacred feet. Velha, may it triumph eternally. So, said differently, he removes the deep rooted, harsh karmas of the past at its very source. The ego that's ever at war, that's constantly creating fights, is destroyed by his grace, and may his sacred feet win or triumph eternally. So naturally, the question comes in that if Muruganar had previously mentioned that the fruits of the labor must be enjoyed by the individual jiva, how is this possible that Bhagavan can completely remove them here at its source? The implication of what he's saying in this line is when the individual abides in the self, the action reactions are like a dream, they come and go. Those reactions do not affect the individuals because they are no longer separate from the source. And because they are united at the source, reactions no longer can occur for the individual soul because there is no soul for it to enjoy the fruits anymore. So those karmas and its benefits or consequences do not die, but the individual who experiences those karmas will no longer exist because they abide in the source, which is none but the self. And when the individual abides in the source, the ego, which is constantly, because of its nature, creating fights, swirls, emotions, likes and dislikes, also ends up subsiding itself in the source. So that's what is meant by கெடுத்தல் அரும் வல்வினையை கீண்டு பூண்டோடே அடர்த்தல் அரும் உட்பகையும் அட்டோன் அடிவெல்க. Meaning, there is no individual to experience the good and the bad, the fighting, and all other passions. And because there is no individual self, and because only the Supreme Self exists, all the actions and reactions do not exist either. They do not pertain to the self anymore. Whatever happens, it happens only through His grace at that point in time. That is the ultimate surrender, the ultimate abidance in the Supreme Self. So that's what's being referred in these two lines by Muruganar. Moving on to the next two lines. ஆணவ ராகத்தோடு அருவருப்பும் தான் அகன்று பூண அரா மெய்யில் புனைந்தோன் அடிவெல்க. Here, Muruganar explains the state of Bhagavan as the one who has completely surrendered and is one with the self. Here he gives three different characteristics as having been completely eradicated or shed by Bhagavan, which are Anavam, other words called as the ego, Ragatodu, which Ragam means desires and passions, Ragatodu, with those desires and passions, Aruvarupum. Aruvarupu means hatred. So having shed ego, desires and passions, and all hatred, Tan Ahantru, having removed those three, Puna Ara Meyil Punaindon Adivelha. He adorns himself with serpents on his body. Puna Ara. Puna means to wear or to adorn. Ara means snakes or serpents. May. May usually refers to truth, or in this case, it means the body, the physical body. Punaindon. he wears or he lets that happen. Adi velha, may his feet ever prevail or may it always be victorious. ஆணவ ராகத்தோடு அருவருப்பும் தான் அகன்று பூண அறாமெய்யில் புனைந்தோன் அடிவல்க. Here it is a beautiful metaphor to describe Lord Shiva. If you see Lord Shiva's image that is historically depicted, Shiva is shown to be sitting in a lotus pose with his eyes closed in pure meditation or in samadhi or perfect bliss. But on his body, there appear to be these serpents or snakes that are moving about. Those serpents are symbolic of ego, desires, passions, and hatreds. Though they move around in his body, he is the least bit disturbed by those that are moving around. No matter how poisonous they are, they do not affect him, nor do they disturb his peace and his samadhi experience. So that is the picture that has been created by the Vedas and Upanishads. And that image is being portrayed here by Muruganar as Bhagavan has completely eradicated ego, desires, and hatred. Though he is metaphorically wearing the serpents on his body, they do not the least bit affect him because he is completely one with the self. May that divine feat that grants the same exact liberation to all his devotees prevail forever. ஆணவ ராகத்தோடு அருவருப்பும் தான் அகன்று பூண அரா மெய்யில் புனைந்தோன் அடிவெல்க. Going back to the previous two lines, here Muruganar says Bhagavan removes those deep-rooted harsh karmas of the past at its very source. And the next two lines describe how he does it. The way he does it is to remove the ego, desires, passions, and all hatred. And because he abides in the self, one with the single universal substratum, though these may appear to exist on his body, they do not the least bit disturb him from his pure abidance in the self. So this idea that the serpents are nothing but these desires, passions, ego, and hatred, Tiruvachakam verse 255 under the heading Tirucharal, Mickkavachagar gives the same exact answer. So Tirucharal is a type of charal is a type of game played by old Tamil maidens, where there are two who actually pose. One poses a question, another poses an answer or response with an answer to the question posed by the first person. So every song here ends with Saralo, which means let's play Saral game. And while playing the game, the first one poses a rhetorical question and the second one answers that rhetorical question. Here, the question that's been posed by the first maiden is பூசுவதும் வெந்நீர் பூண்பதுவும் பொங்கரவும் பேசுவதும் திருவாயால் மறைபோலும் காணேடி. The answer is பூசுவதும் பேசுவதும் பூண்பதுவும் கொண்டென்ன ஈசனவன் எவ்வுயிர்க்கும் இயல்பானான் சாழலோ. Here, the first two lines, பூசுவதும் வெந்நீர், he smears white sacred ashes across his body. பூண்பதுவும் பொங்கரவம், he wears these serpents which are smearing their heads across his body. So he smears white ash across his body and he wears these serpents. பேசுவதும் திருவாயால், he utters or he mumbles in his holy mouth. They appear like Marabolum, they appear like those Vedas. Kanedi, why is he doing that? Or don't you see that he's doing it? So the question is somewhat rhetorical and trying to answer why Lord Shiva, who smears ashes across his body, has those serpents on his body, and he just goes about reciting Vedas through his holy mouth. What's up with that? The answer is பூசுவதும் பேசுவதும் பூண்பதும் கொண்டென்ன ஈசனவன் எவ்வுயிர்க்கும் இயல்பானான் சாழலோ. பூசுவதும், though he smears, பேசுவதும், though he speaks about or he mutters, பூண்பதுவும், though he wears those serpents across his body. So though he smears ashes, speaks about or mutters Vedas, and adorns his body with those snakes, கொண்டு என்ன, so what? Because ஈசனவன், our Lord Ishvara, எவ்வுயிர்க்கும், for all lives or all jivas, இயல்பானான், he is the most natural, or he shines within them as the most natural self. Saralo. Let's play Saral. So the first maiden asks, because he wears all these things, because he smears holy ashes, and he mutters those Vedas, why is he doing it? The answer is, so what, he does all of them, but Ishvara is the most natural self within each life. That's the answer that Mickkavachagar gives, which is being referred to as ஆணவ ராகத்தோடு அருவருப்பும் தான் அகன்று பூண அரா மெய்யில் புனைந்தோன் அடிவெல்க. Those egos, passions, hatreds all disappear on his body. They subside, though he is completely undisturbed and ever present in everybody's heart. So that is the established truth in these two lines by Muruganar. Moving on to next two lines 131 to 132. வஞ்சி போர் மாலை வனைந்து ஏற்ற மாற்றாரை விஞ்சித்தார் வாகை புனை வீரட்டன் தாழ்வெல்க. These two lines establish some beautiful Sangam literature Tamil words, and we will peel the onion one at a time in these two lines because there's so much buried in these. First, வஞ்சி போர் மாலை வனைந்து ஏற்ற மாற்றாரை விஞ்சி தார் வாகை புனை வீரட்டன் தாழ்வெல்க. வஞ்சி போர் மாலை. So Vanji is a type of flower from the old Sangam period. Por Malai. Por Malai is a garland adorned by a king who's going to a war. So Vanji Por Malai Vanaindu, meaning somebody who's going to war wears the Vanji flowers around their neck as a garland. And why Vanji flower, we will see in a minute. Vanaindu ஏற்ற மாற்றாரை. Vanaindu ஏற்ற means they come with very decorative arguments or come with very argumentative mindset. Matrar. Matrar is enemies or foes or just people who do not in general agree. So what does the first line mean? Those who come to Bhagavan with massive arguments, decorative, um, philosophies, and with the mindset to kind of defeat him using some logic or some philosophy, come with a huge noise, and they wear the equivalent of Vanji garland across their head, declaring war. Declaring war with what? With silence, with the natural, peaceful, and perpetually abiding self. They come at war using mind, intellect, and argumentative philosophies. So those are the two sides. So Bhagavan seated, he is a pure self, and when arguments are presented to him with warlike nature, what happens? Vinji tar vagai punai. Vinji is to exceed, or to quieten. So when those argumentative folks come about declaring war, he just silences them. How does he silence them? By purely abiding in the bliss of the self. And therefore, it said tar, vahai punai. Tar is a garland. Vahai is yet another type of flower, usually worn by the victorious king, having won the war. Veeratan. Veeratan is a type of, is a specific name given to Lord Shiva, for he won 8 different demons in 8 different places. These are 8 beautiful temples across South India, which I will describe in a minute. So here Bhagavan is described as Shiva, who's won in 8 different places. And how did he win? With wearing Vanji garlands across their neck. When people approach him with warring mindset, declaring different philosophies and become argumentative, he simply silences them by being quiet and completely abiding in the self. There is no action needed, there is no arguments needed, and therefore he wins them over, and he wears Vagai flower across his neck, having won them over. And he is called as Veeratan. In other words, Shiva, who has won in 8 different places. Tal Velha, may his divine feet forever triumph. So that's what's meant by these 2 lines. First, let's see what is Veera Attan. There are 8 places that Lord Shiva won. First is Tirukovalur, which is where Shiva vanquished the demon Andakasura. Andakasura is an inner demon that Shiva crushes over, so to prevail peace and happiness. Incidentally, Tirukovalur is the place that Bhagavan stopped on his way to Tiruvannamalai when he left Madurai in 1896. And Tirukovalur is where Bhagavan has this beautiful experience of this blissful light while waiting for the priest to come out. Second is Tiruvadigai. Tiruvadigai is where Lord Shiva destroys the Tripurasuras, or those demons with 3 different cities or 3 different flying cities. And there are other names for this place, but here this is the famous place where the 3 different types of states are completely won over by Lord Shiva, who is perfectly at bliss after this. Next is Tirukurukkai, where Lord Shiva burnt Kama, the god of love, for disturbing his penance. Fourth is Tirukandiyur, where Lord Shiva appeared as Bhairava form and killed Brahma and by removing 5 heads. Here the idea of creation is completely destroyed, because in bliss there is no creation or destruction. They are ever happy and abiding in the pure bliss and self. So that is Tirukandiyur. The 5th is Tirukadayur or Tirukadavur, where he conquered Yama, the god of death, and saving his devotee Markandeya. This reference will be placed in Ramana Puranam yet again in the later verses. Muruganar makes an explicit reference to this episode of Lord Shiva. So here, the purpose of this particular conquering is guaranteeing those devotees who have completely surrendered will be in a deathless state, or they would neither have birth and death. They would be in permanent abidance of the self. 6th is Tiruparialur. Here, Lord Shiva appears as Veerabhadra and destroyed Daksha's yajna and also beheaded Daksha. 7th is Tiruvalluvur. Here, he kills the elephant demon, Gajasura. And here, the symbolic meaning of this is that he removes the mind, which is dark and big, and removes the dirts or the ignorance that comes with mind's darkness or ignorance. The next one is Tiruvirkudi. Here, Shiva vanquished Jalandhara, a powerful demon who seemed to have born from Shiva's 3rd eye when the eye was open. Here, this means the ego that is born out of Shiva himself is destroyed and vanquished at the end of it all. So these are the 8 different places. Each 8 of them have their own stories, and they also have their metaphysical stories. Um, Needless to say that these 8 places are what's being referred to as Veera Attan Velha, or Veerattan Thal Velha. Because Bhagavan is in pure bliss, whatever arguments that come his way, they die of their own accord. He doesn't need to go and win them over. Um, and then the references he made with Vanji flower, in the old Tamil, for example, I found this reference in Silappadiharam, which is one of the oldest, books in Tamil poetry. பூவாவஞ்சியில் பூத்தவஞ்சி வாய்வாள் நெடுந்தகை மணிமுடி கனிந்து, which means the Puvavanjil is Vanji is a place. Puvavanji is the non-flower Vanji, which is the place. Puttavanji, the flowering Vanji, is worn as the necklace or garland. வாய்வாள் நெடுந்தகை மணிமுடி கடிந்து. So he walked. Here the hero is being described as walking with you know armor for war, and he wears these vanji flowers over his head, across his neck. And then the definition of what is vanji is given. Vatkar male selva vanjiyam. So vanji is a garland that's worn by ancient kings of Tamil when they are about to begin the fight. So the king who initiates the fight wears vanji flowers. That's how we know the king has initiated the fights. The king who defends wears the flower called kanji. So kanji is a type of flower which is now available in a place called Kanjipuram. That's how the word came about. The kanji flower is worn by the defending king. So that's how the defending army would wear kanji flowers, and then the attacking army would wear vanji flowers. And whoever wins this war will wear vagai flowers. So Porkalathu Mikkar Seruvendrathu Vagayam. So these references are found in the 9th century work called Puramburul Venba Malai, which gives all these definitions of the Sangam period and how the culture of Tamil speaking land had evolved. So the Vanji flowers are worn by the kings who are attacking or the army that's attacking. Kanji flowers are worn by the defending king and the defending army. And who wins the war ends up wearing Vagai flowers. So that reference is used by Muruganar here in describing Vanji Pormalai Vanaindu Etra Matrare Vinjittar Vagai Punai Veerattan Thalvelha. So the first portion is Vanji Pormalai. So those who come about argumentative, declaring war, where Vanji Pormalai are the garlands for declaring war as attacking Bhagavan. Vinji, he wins them over by silencing them. Tar Vagai Punai, he having won them over, he wears the Vagai flowers across his neck. Obviously, these are metaphors, it's not real. But it actually gives the allegory from the old Sangam period as to how the attack happens, how the warring factions attack, and how Bhagavan wins them over by simply being silent. And often we can see examples of this in many, many places in both talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi as well as day by day with Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi by Devaraja Mudaliar. And so these definitions are beautiful, and Muruganar has used those definitions beautifully in this verse. So going back, Vanji Por Malai Vanaindu Etra Matrare Vinjittar Vagai Punai Veerattan Thalvelha. Here Bhagavan is shown to be, enduring the attacks and having won them over. However, is that true that Bhagavan is at war? No. That's what Muruganar says in next 2 lines. Lines 133 and 134. நட்டார்க்கு தோற்றலை நானா பெருங்குணத்தோன் மட்டார்க்கும் செந்தாமரை பூங்கழல் வெல்க. Exactly as a contrast to the prior 2 lines, when argumentative folks come in, he remains silent and he silences them and he wins them over purely through silence. The next two lines, he says, Nattarku Thotralai. Nattar means devotees or those who have surrendered. Thotralai. Thotralai means to lose or to yield. Nana Perungunathon. Nana means does not hesitate or does not shy away. Perum Gunathon. Perum is big or large. Gunathon is he of great nature. So, Nattarku Thotralai Nana Perungunathon means those who surrendered with whatever they ask, he does not hesitate to yield before the humble hearts. Such is his great character, such is his great nature. And we see that the examples of this again abound in many devotees' lives, where devotees who surrendered, who ask, he not only goes and does, but he actually kind of never hesitates to yield for their request because they can just melt him through their love and their devotion and surrender. Mattu ஆர்க்கும் செந்தாமரை பூங்கழல் வெல்க. Here, these are all beautiful Tamil words. Mattarkum is mattu and arkum. Mattarkum means flowing or overflowing with honey. Mattarkum means imagine a flower, and the flower is so pregnant with honey, and the honey is overflowing out of the petals. Mattarkum Sendamarai. Sendamarai is red, beautiful flower, which is lotus. Tamarai is lotus. Sendamarai is beautiful red lotus or beautiful lotus. So, out of that beautiful lotus, since it is so pregnant, the honey is dripping over its petals. And he gives that as a metaphor for Poomgaral Velha. Poomgaral is those sacred anklets. So, in other words, Muruganar refers to Bhagavan's anklets as an example or an allegory to the inner awareness, which is called I am I or I, that is so pregnant, that is so wonderful in getting one to its source or them to their source. It is equivalent to a lotus flower that is so pregnant that drips with honey, honey of joy and honey of bliss. So that is what his sacred anklets or the feet wearing sacred anklets would do. May that be victorious. So, Nattarku Thotrulai Nana Perungunathon Mattarkum Sendamarai Poongazhal Velga. So, between these two lines, 131 and 132, as well as 133 and 134, sorry. In the first two lines, he says, if somebody is declaring war with argumentative viewpoints and, just for the sake of trying to defeat and be argumentative, they are won over by purely inner silence, and they are silenced also in that process, and he wins them over. However, those who approach him with humility, devotion, and surrender, he bends over and he yields because of his great character. So, what in all of these? Which is like a beautiful lotus flower that is pregnant with honey and drips over and spills over because of its abundance. The inner awareness that shines in everybody also drips over with pure bliss. And such is his anklets that are worn by his holy feet. May them prevail forever, or may those be ever victorious. Reading again. வஞ்சி போர்மாலை வனைந்து ஏற்ற மாற்றாரை விஞ்சித் தார் வாகை புனை வீரட்டன் தாழ்வெல்க நட்டார்க்குத் தோற்றலை நாணா பெருங்குணத்தோன் மட்டார்க்கும் செந்தாமரை பூங்கழல் வெல்க. Next four lines. ஏய இளமக்கள் இதயத்து மெய்யன்பு மேய விதம் நோக்கி வியப்பித்து வெம்பாசம் தட்கும் திருச்சந்நிதானத்தில் என் அகந்தை வெட்கும் பரிசு ஆண்டோன் வீர கழல் வெல்க. These are beautiful 4 lines that explains the power of gaze that Bhagavan has in lighting up the self within each and every one. ஏய இளமக்கள், ஏய means similar to or like. Ilamakkal is young in maturity or youthful. So the joint meaning of Eya Ilamakkal is those who are yet to be awakened to the self or those who are unawakened to the self. Idayattu Meyyanbu, in their hearts, Meyyanbu, true love blossoms. How does that happen? So he lights up those who are yet to be awakened by blossoming love within their hearts. How does that happen? Meya vidam noki viyapittu. He surprises them and establishes them into the self by mere look. Meya vidam noki meyyanbu meya. The true love blossoms in their heart through his mere gaze or mere look, which is a common experience of anybody who goes to Tiruvachakam. By being in Bhagavan's presence, people feel the supreme shining self within themselves, and that's what's being referred to here. ஏய இளமக்கள் இதயத்து மெய்யன்பு மேய விதம் நோக்கிய வியப்பித்து. ஏய இளமக்கள் is those who are yet to be awakened, or those who are young in maturity of the spiritual age. இதயத்து மெய்யன்பு மேய, in their heart, the true love to blossom. Vidam noki viyapittu. He establishes them by simply gazing them or mere gaze. Then Vempasam Tatkum Tiruchannidanathil. Vempasam is harsh or hard to dissolve bonds of the past. Vempasam is the ties or bonds that are created because of tight-knit karmas of the past or tight-knit past actions. Tatkum is to stop or to abruptly end. So Tiruchannidhanam. Channidhanam usually means the inner sanctum of a temple. Here Sannidhanam means his presence or his holy presence, which is everywhere. So Vempasam Tatkum Tiruchannidhanathil. In his holy presence, those bonds that are hard to dissolve will completely end up disappearing. Yen ahandai vetkum. So what happens in that presence? When in addition to those bonds that are hard to dissolve, dissolving completely, yen ahandai vetkum means my ego completely dissolves and my ego completely retreats in silence. Yen ahandai vetkum parisu andon. He has given me the outcome or result. Andon is my Lord or one who's ruled me over. Veera Kazhal Velha. Kazhal is anklets. Veera Kazhal is those anklets of his victorious feet. Velha. May those ever resound in triumph. May they shine ever in triumph. So to summarize this, to those who are yet to be awakened to the self, his mere grace blossoms them into true love, and in addition, dissolves the bonds forged by the past karma right in his holy presence. And in that presence, my ego retreats in silence. Here, he's talking about Muruganar himself in saying that Muruganar's ego completely dissolved. Such is the greatness of my Lord. May the anklets of his victorious feet forever resound in triumph. ஏய இளமக்கள் இதயத்து மெய்யன்பு மேய விதம் நோக்கி வியப்பித்து வெம்பாசம் தட்கும் திருச்சந்நிதானத்தில் என் அகந்தை வெட்கும் பரிசு ஆண்டோன் வீரக் கழல் வெல்க. So here Muruganar declares two things. By his simple gaze or his simple presence, even those who are not awake to the self get to experience the complete, pure self within themselves, within their hearts. Second, in that holy presence, hard to ignore or hard to dissolve bonds completely disappear. Third, ego retreats in silence, or ego abides, having no business to exist and having been shied away or silenced by Bhagavan's presence. Such is his valor, and such is the anklets of his victorious feet. Here, Veera Karil is used as a metaphor to refer to the supreme presence or the inner awareness that shines in everybody. So, reading these four lines, ஏய இளமக்கள் இதயத்து மெய்யன்பு மேய விதம் நோக்கி வியப்பித்து வெம்பாசம் தட்கும் திருச்சந்நிதானத்தில் என் அகந்தை வெட்கும் பரிசு ஆண்டோன் வீரக் கழல் வெல்க. Those are those four lines. Moving on to next two lines, lines 139 to 140. காதாரும் கேள்வியால் காமுற்று தன்னடி சீர் ஓதா நின்றார்கட்கு உறுதியோன் தாழ் வெல்க. Here, the idea of listening to Bhagavan's glory and singing his glory are being discussed. Kadarum kelviyal. Kadu arum means Kadu kulirum in Tamil, which is to the pleasantness of the ears. So, for our ears to cool off or our ears to be in delight, hearing his glories, Kamutru kelviyal, Kadarum kelviyal, to listen to his glories being sung, காமுற்று தன்னடிச்சீர் ஓதா நின்றார்கட்கு. ஓதா nindrar means those who sing his praises. So either hear his praises being sung or sing his praises. And kamutru. Kamutru is with great love or with great devotion. Tan adichir, the greatness of his holy feet. So what happens? காதாரம் கேள்வியால் காமுற்று தன்னடிச்சீர் ஓதா நின்றார்கட்கு உறுதியோன் தாழ்வெல்க. He reveals the paths to liberation, or he reveals them the inner awareness of the self. Urudi means usually guarantee, or usually the path or the clarity is what is urudi. So he gives the clarity of the self through the inner awareness for those who hear the glories of his presence, or those who sing his glory or sing the praises of his sacred feet. So here, in the traditional Vedanta, it is it's three things: listening, mananam is constantly saying or reminding oneself. Third is practicing that. And so here the first two things are being discussed. For those who hear his glories or listen to his glories, and those who sing his glories or constantly think of his glories, his sacred face revealed to them, which is a third part, which is constantly abiding in it. So the traditional Vedanta is being discussed here. And the one thing to note here is the three different paths that are defined here: listening, praising. Those are only to know or to have him reveal his glory or his supreme feat, which is the inner awareness. Bhagavan is given a direct path, which is who am I, or self-inquiry, which is to directly land oneself to the inner awareness or the inner self, which is otherwise described as Thar or his holy feet. So that inner awareness guarantees or makes the path to liberation certain. So that is what is being said as Urudiyon, or it is paved and it's permanent. காதாரும் கேள்வியால் காமுற்று தன்னடி சீர் ஓதா நின்றார்கட்கு உறுதியோன் தாழ்வெல்க. The beauty here is, although the traditional Vedanta of listening, praising or contemplating, praising and contemplating, they are all shrunk into one simple path, which is the constant self-inquiry when practice leads one to the inner awareness. And those who cannot, or who cannot sustain that practice, are advised to listening to his glories, singing his glories, or talking his glories, or thinking of his glories. And that leads to the inner awareness, or that leads to the direct path, which is otherwise given to us by self-inquiry. So going back, காதாரும் கேள்வியால் காமுற்று தன்னடி சீர் ஓதா நின்றார்கட்கு உறுதியோன் தாழ்வெல்க. Next two lines are beautiful. There are a couple of different ways of looking at these two lines. பிங்கள மேனி பெருமான் புலிகன மங்கள வாசகர் வாழ்த்துவோன் தாழ்வெல்க. So the first line is given as a quote, which is Pingalameni Peruman Puliga Ena. Ena is usually as. So Pingalameni Peruman Puliga Ena Mangala Vasagar Valtuon Talvelha. Pingalameni. Pingalam is golden hue, or what is called as Punniram in Tamil, which is golden body. Pingalameni is one whose body is shining, or one whose body is glorious or splendorous. Peruman is Lord. Puliga, may that shine eternally. So Pingalameni Peruman Puliga means, may the golden radiance of his form, or my Lord's form, shine eternally. Ena, as Mangala Vasagar Valtuon Talvelha. So Mangala means auspicious words. Mangala Vasagar is those who utter those auspicious words. So that's the literal meaning. Vasagar is usually used as an abbreviation for Manikavasagar. So Mangala Vasagar here also can be meant or can be understood as Manikavasagar. So the first way of understanding is Mangala Vasagar Valtuon Talvelga. Valtuon is those who praise, or those who sing those praises. So first way of understanding is those who sing his praises as may the golden radiance of his form shine eternally, are first praised for singing such glory of the Lord. And he ends as Talvelga. May his divine feet forever triumph. That's one way of understanding it. Or the second way of understanding is, may his divine feet triumph forever, and the divine feet is praised by Manikavachagar with golden words, may the golden radiance of his form shine eternally. So while searching for the reference for this word Pingalameni Peruman Puliga, which is being used as the one that is being sung by Manikavachagar, one can find reference in Tiruvachakam verse, which is verse number 9 in Anubhava Sutti of Tiruvachakam. Here, the word Punne Tigagam Tirumeni, meaning your body is like golden hued. That is the reason behind saying Pingalameni Peruman Poliga Ena. The full verse of Tiruvachakam is so beautiful, which says தன்மை பிறரால் அறியாத தலைவா பொல்லா நாயன புன்மையேனை ஆண்டு ஐயா புறமே போக விடுவாயோ என்னை நோக்குவார் யாரே என் நான் செய்கேன் எம்பெருமான் பொன்னே திகழும் திருமேனி எந்தாய் எங்கு புகுவேனே. This roughly means தன்மை பிறரால் அறியாத தலைவா. You are the Lord, you are the leader, and the primal awareness or the primer self cannot be understood by others. Because in order to have others, there's a duality, The duality cannot lead to understanding the self. So, in other words, he cannot be understood using our minds or intellects. Tanmai piraral ariyada thalaiva. So, you cannot, my Lord, you cannot be understood by anything other than by being in your presence. Polla nayana punmayene. Punmayene is lowly being. Polla is rogue. Nayana means a dog like. So he's describing himself here. Mickkavachagar is describing himself as a rogue dog. That's lowly life. Andu Ayya, you have come over to rule me over. Your glory cannot be understood unless you are absorbed within you. Although I do not deserve, because I'm a rogue dog with lowly means and lowly being, you have come over to absorb me into your fold. Ayya, he's saying, O Lord, Purame poha viduvayo, will you now let me go outside? Meaning, can I go and engage with the external world? The answer is no. Nobody, I cannot engage with the external world because to abide in the self is to abide in the glory of the Supreme Being. Why would I go and engage in anything other than the Supreme Self? Then he says, Ennai nokkuvar yare, who can even look at me or who cares about me? Yen நான் செய்கேன், what can I do? Emperuman, O my Lord, பொன்னே திகழும் திருமேனி, your body is, shining with golden hue. Endai, O my Father, எங்கு புகுவேனே, where else can I go? Or where else I could possibly do? So he's pleading that having come to the Lord's folds, having abided in his glory, what else can he do? Who else possibly engage with him? What else he can possibly do? He's, I mean, the Lord's body is in golden hue and he's looking at us and he's crying and he's actually praising the Lord in that love. So that melting love is what is being referred to in the prior two lines. பிங்களமேனி பெருமான் புலிக என மங்களவாசகர் வாழ்த்துவோன் தாழ்வெல்க. Here, if understood as Mickkavachagar's words, those words are given here as Ponne Thegazhum Tirumeni, or if it's understood as anybody who sings auspicious words, he reveals his holy feet to them for those who behold his radiant form which shines eternally. Either case, he bestows his inner aware or our inner awareness to us by constantly praising him through devotion and surrender, which is Pingalameni Peruman Puliga Ena Mangala Vasagar Valtuvon Tal Velha. Let's go back to where we started, which is lines number 127 to 128. கெடுத்தலரும் வல்வினையை கீண்டு பூண்டோடே அடர்த்தல் அரும் உட்பகையும் அட்டோன் அடி வெல்க. He removes the deep-rooted harsh karmas of the past at its very source, and the inner ego, which is ever at war, is also destroyed by his grace. May his feet triumph forever. The next two lines are ஆனவர் ஆகத்தோடு அருவருப்பும் தானகன்று பூண அரா மெய்யில் புனைந்தோன் அடி வெல்க. Having shed ego, desires, and hatred, he adorns himself with the serpents on his body. May his divine feet ever prevail. The next two lines are Vanji Pormalai Vanaindu Etra Matrare Vinjittar Vagai Punai Veerattan Thalvelha. With Vanji blossoms, with Vanji flowers, a garlands being made, wearing them, those who come at war with lots of words and philosophies are being silenced. He is the mighty Lord who conquered his force in 8 different realms or 8 different places. And by wearing the Vahai flower, he wins them over. May his divine feet forever triumph. நட்டார்க்கு தோற்றலை நானா பெருங்குணத்தோன் மட்டார்க்கும் செந்தாமரை பூங்கழல் வெல்க. Yet he does not hesitate to yield before the humble devotees who surrender his feet. May his sacred feet, dripping with grace like honey, be ever victorious. Those feet are compared to a lotus that's so pregnant that drips with honey. That's how gracious are his feet. That reveals the self by or through its presence as inner awareness. The next four lines, ஏய இளமக்கள் இதயத்து மெய்யன்பு மேய விதம் நோக்கிய வியப்பித்து வெம்பாசம் தட்கும் திருச்சன்னிதானத்தில் என் அகந்தை வெட்கும் பரிசு ஆண்டோன் வீரக் கழல் வெல்க. To those still unawakened to the self, his mere gaze blossoms true self-love within, dissolving the bonds forged by past karma. In his holy presence, my ego retreats in silence. May the anklets of his victorious feet forever resound in triumph. Next two lines. காதாரும் கேள்வியால் காமுற்றுத் தன்னடிச்சீர் ஓதா நின்றார்கட்கு உறுதியோன் தாழ்வல்க. To those who delight in hearing his glories and singing the praise of his sacred feet, he reveals the path to liberation. May his victorious feet forever prevail. பிங்களமேனி பெருமான் புலிகென மங்கள வாசகர் வாழ்த்துவோன் தாழ்வல்க. May the golden radiance of his form shine eternally. Such sweet auspicious hymns are sung in his praise, such as Mickkavachagar. May his divine feet forever triumph. With that, we will wrap today. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Namo Ramanaya. I really like this line, Tirusannidhanathil ahandai vetkum. It's like bowing down. It's like out of shy maybe. Or you cannot, because you are unreal, so you cannot stand in front of real, which is self.
Yeah.
Or which is, okay, your show is done. It comes to end. You cannot cheat me anymore. Like that, it's kind of full stop once it comes to Bhagavan's presence. It's
Absolutely.
like, yeah, end of story.
Yes.
Yeah.
The unreal doesn't exist in front of the real, right?
Mhm.
And that's the beautiful thing he says. In ahande vetkum, my ego shies away because it can't hold on to the reality in his presence.
Mhm. And also, for me, inside what it came is like, it's like Shakti, Ambal. It's kind of out of shy. It's bowing down. In also in Ulladinarpadu, there are some lines. It says that once it turned inward, it will not survive anymore.
Yeah.
Something like, it's like end of story. That's what I thought. And then the Tiruvachakam line, another line was Purame Poga Viduvayo. It was really powerful, because whenever sometimes not turning inside it's due to the vasanas. If it's not working out, then this line is, when you are here, how can I go outside? So you are with me. It's kind of encouraging that lines, Purame Poga Viduvayo. So it's kind of more, you are with me. Why I have to?
That's the power of Tiruvachakam in many ways, right? So is Muruganar's verses, in that they're bone melting words. And you could just see that how, either Mickkavachagar or Muruganar, how they use these words that are laser like, they're X-ray like, and they just strike you at its heart, right? This entire verse, "Ennai nokkuvar yare," who can possibly look at me except you looking at me, right? This refers to Bhagavan as well, in which Muruganar says, Bhagavan's gaze alone lights up even those who are uninitiated in the path. How true is that, right? How many accounts in, the Call Divine magazine or the mountain path, we see that people just come and stand or sit in front of Bhagavan, and then they get lit up and they're completely in tune with whatever Bhagavan mentioned and who am I, and they get absorbed. So just that line alone, "Ennai nokkuvar yare," "Ennan seighen emperuman," what else can I do? Or what have I done? How beautiful is that love and the devotion, right?
And also, we can also take it as a kannokam, like Bhagavan's parvai, then it will put you to that state right away. You're not doing any sadhana there, but you are pulled to that silence immediately, without any effort.
Yeah, the Tirukannokam, which is, I'm just pulling that out in the book, in Sri Ramana Sannidhi Murai. It's one of the most, when he says in verse number 16, 13 of Tirukannokam, Muruganar says, எண்ணியவை எண்ணியவாறு எய்திடலாம் ஏழீர் மண்ணிடை வன்குளத்துறங்கு மதர்ப்புடை மீன் விழிபோல உள்நிலவு நாட்டத்தால் உளத்துறங்கும் ஓர் இயல்பால் கண்ணிமையா ரமணனோடு கண்ணோக்கம் ஆடாமோ. Roughly speaking, like whatever you think of, you can achieve, or poor people, in the land there is like this small well. Within that well there's beautiful fish, like fish eyes. His beautiful eyes emit such grace, and they force you to go inside. உள்நிலவு நாட்டத்தால் உளத்துறங்கும் மூரியல்பால். It is otherwise sleep. If you wake that up, you stare at it internally, you can achieve whatever you want. But why are you cribbing about it? Kannimiya Ramananodu Kannokkamadamo. He never blinks his eyes. Kannokkamadamo. Can we not play Kannokkam? Right? I mean, that is you can just see how Punar writes these wonderful, like the entire Tirukannokam, you can just melt in love that Muruganar had for Bhagavan. Every word, one after the other.
Absolutely. Yes. Wonderful. Okay.
If there are no other questions, we will see next week. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Thank you. Namo Ramana.